story of Uncle Joe Sensor, former tight end for the Minnesota Vikings, and also a 6-year analyst for the KFAN Minnesota Vikings radio network. Now, over the course of the next 20 minutes or so, you're going to hear some highlights and a lot of Joe Sensor as we celebrate the memory in 9 to noon-like fashion. The first one you're going to hear involves the very first regular season game Joe Sensor and yours truly called together. It was in Champaign, Illinois, as Soldier Field was being renovated. It was my first regular season game doing play-by-play. The heat index that day was like 120. Jim Miller, bubble screen for a nickname. He hit David Terrell for a game-winning touchdown in overtime. But yours truly, being as excitable as I can be, got so excited at some point during that game. There was a player named Talance Sawyer who caused a fumble. I got so excited in my first regular season game, I stood up real fast, like leapt out of my chair, and I pulled all my mic cords out of the contraption. Well, Uncle Joe Sensor was laughing so loudly, but not describing the play. You're going to hear somebody yell, "Talk!" in the background, and that's going to be our next guest. His name is Doug Westerman, former program director and executive producer of the Vikings Radio Network. Let's take a listen to that call.
No play action. Miller looking left. Big rush by Robbins. It's enough.
That's it.
The Minnesota Vikings recover the fumble.
There's Joe.
At least we're going to wait for the call from the official. We got so excited up here. We're running out of things to say.
Okay, so here, that's the deal. Hey, Doug, what's going on, Pops?
That and you spilled before the game started without damaging any charts or paper, and you knocked your binoculars out the window.
Yeah.
And I had to run down again and pray that we weren't going to get sued.
Yeah, I was a little excited for my first regular season game and the blessing and privilege that it was to call Vikings games. But I'll never forget when Talance Sawyer, you hear Fred Robbins, Sawyer caused the fumble, but then you don't hear me. Why? Because I leapt out of my chair, pulled all the cords out, and Uncle Joe was laughing. He wouldn't stop laughing. And about 8 seconds after, we hear you go, "Talk!" And then Joe continued to laugh. I mean, because Doug was there in Champaign. That's one of several moments we'll never forget about Joe. What are some things that jump out at you, Pops?
Joe and I mean, just the amount of time we worked together at different, like, little iterations of our lives and things like that. We did go for football together with Bob Kurtz one year.
Ooh.
Before you were in town. And that was around the time he was opening his Roseville restaurant, his first restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And then as time went on, he joined us at the Fan in 2002. Or no, he joined us in 2001 with the Terry Stenbridge year. And then he and I worked together at Compass Media after he left the Vikings, and I was away from the radio station. And, you know, not a gentler soul alive.
Right.
And so warm and always genuinely interested in what's going on with you. And he's one of those guys who remembers your kids' names and stuff like that. So he's just fantastic. And it's so sad what's happened.
And Doug Westerman, former program director and executive producer of the Vikings Radio Network, back when Joe Gregg and I called the games. It's, you know, you being from Minnesota and living here all your life and being a Vikings fan, you remember how good Joe was and could have been as a tight end, right?
Yeah, I mean, his knee gave out on him year 4 or something like that, because he was only 4 years with the club. And I don't even know if Joe made it into the Metrodome. I mean, that's how long ago it was.
I think he did. Yeah, he was a rookie in 80, Metrodome 81, if I'm not mistaken. Then I think the year after that, he had the knee. And then that was it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like it was such a short amount of time. And why, even though I never watched him play games or called his games, it's how I knew he was Vikings tight end immortality is because when Kyle Rudolph or low-key TJ Hawkinson are like getting close to records, Sensor's name is always right there with Steve Jordan. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yep.
So you don't do that if you're not good.
Correct. And it, 6th round draft choice,
Yep.
Westchester State, which is like Division II, I believe. And it's like, yeah, but. And for a long time, he held the NCAA single-season field goal percentage record because he played basketball in college as well as football, which is unheard of nowadays.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, I don't have any of my game calling depth charts in front of me, but like Uncle Joe Sensor's name, it was on a majority of the game calling depth charts from last year because like TJ Hawkinson has X amount of 100-yard receiving games for the Vikings, and I think that number is 1, where I think Sensor had 2. So like if the next one TJ gets, he ties Joe Sensor, who only played like a few handful of games, and sadly from a knee was not able to extend that career. Now, we had a lot of great conversations and a lot of things shared on road trips. When I started doing play-by-play, you were starting as the executive producer of the Vikings Radio Network. Joe and Greg were in their second year. When I came in 2002, but it's the way I've portrayed it with Joe is that under all circumstances, he always looked to make people feel better after some losses. And I can't remember Joe ever like ripping somebody or talking behind somebody's back. I mean, he was like a 0 of 10 when it came to the small-minded nature of talking about people negatively.
Especially in our business, you know what I'm saying? It's crazy. Another thing about him from a professional standpoint, a technical standpoint and a performance standpoint, he's like one of the top 3 analysts I ever worked with in terms of making the play-by-play guy sound better and giving the play-by-play guy credibility if he kind of misses a note here and there. And it was just so fun to work with him. And he could like just do really nuancy things like taking it out of a break without having to go to the play-by-play guy first. And, he was just such a delight to work with. And, you never had to yell at him to not talk because, like, when we're doing something, like I said, very nuancy in an ID, he knows not to talk. And, there's every analyst kind of slips that up once in a while. Joe never did.
My man, love you very much. Thank you very much for sharing memories with us. May God rest the soul of Uncle Joe Sensor. And you and your family have a good day, okay?
All right. Thanks.
Yeah, appreciate you, Pops. That's Doug Westerman, the program director back in the day at AM 1130 KFAN. He's the one who hired me to do PA in Dubay and also helped me become play-by-play voice for the Minnesota Vikings despite 0 professional experience in 2002. And I had the privilege of calling games with Joe Sensor. And we're celebrating his memory in this segment like we did atop the show with Greg Coleman. Joe Sensor, ever altruistic.
It's a long year. Everybody just relax. It's going to be all right.
I have some Skol stories I'd like to share. And let's begin in 2003. All right? 2003. It's the Vikings have a game against the Arizona Cardinals. And it's the final game of the regular season. We're at Sun Devil Stadium. That team was coached by the late Dave McGinnis. May God rest his soul. Dave McGinnis was in his final game coaching the Arizona Cardinals. Emmitt Smith, yes, that HOF. He was a running back for the Arizona Cardinals. Didn't play much. That was his final game. If the Minnesota Vikings win this game, they get into the playoffs and the Green Bay Packers are eliminated. If they lose the game, the Minnesota Vikings are out of the playoffs and the Green Bay Packers sneak in. Now, there's a certain call that ends with somebody saying, no, the Cardinals have knocked the Vikings out of the playoffs, that many people have heard for many years. But have you heard how much Joe Sensor loved the Minnesota Vikings with what led up to that final call? You can hear the desperation of the emotion in his voice, absolutely capturing how big the moment was, the level of the moment. And here it is.
4th down from the 28-yard line.
Yeah, and the clock continues to run, PA.
17, 16, 15.
See, they have to go deep into the end zone.
We better put some people in the end zone, right, Joe?
That's exactly right.
I mean, there's nobody inside the 10.
Get back, guys.
Here it is. The season's on the line. 2 receivers left and right. McCown takes the snap. He steps up. He's all by himself. Fires. Vikings out of the playoffs.
There was a day your KFAN Minnesota Vikings radio network sounded like that. And to a certain extent at times, see the Minneapolis Miracle? It does now. The moment defines itself. But not everybody brings the level of care that Joe Sensor did. I just want you to hear that first part again. And in my second year doing play-by-play, the child that comes out in me, like I'm talking to my surrogate dad, where he's like, something about we don't have enough guys in the end zone. And then I'm like, we got to get guys back, right, Joe? I mean, the whole season's on the line. I'm a child. That's my surrogate. Listen.
4th down from the 28-yard line.
Yeah, and the clock continues to run, PA.
17, 16, 15.
See, they have to go deep into the end zone.
We better put some people in the end zone, right, Joe?
Exactly right.
I mean, there's nobody
there.
Inside the 10.
Get back, guys.
Here it is.
Get back, guys. How about that? Get back, guys. What a man. What a broadcaster. What a man. Let's go to 2004. Okay. 2004 at Soldier Field. This is one that I've never shared on the radio, and I'm going to make it fast. All right. So the Vikings are having a pretty good year, 2004. We're at Soldier Field, and we get there 3 hours before the game. That's just when the buses arrive from the team hotel. And the broadcasters and Joe and I and Greg, we were on the first buses. Get to Soldier Field, setting my stuff up, game calling depth chart, taping stuff up. Joe's sitting there, and I see something to my right, a placard. And I'm like, Joe, what is this next to me? Okay, nobody else is on we call games away from the press box at Soldier Field. Much lower level behind the Bears bench. Honestly, we're about 30 yards from the Bears bench, 20 yards. It's a wonderful video game angle. The press box is the worst in the NFL. It's way up in the corner at Soldier Field. It's terrible. I'm glad we're not up there. So I see this placard and it has hieroglyphics on it. Well, the hieroglyphics turns out were plays. Okay, well, what is this? So I'm like, Uncle Joe, what is this? And he looked at it and he said, this is the Bears' first 15 plays. Look at the date. Look at the formations. Look at the numbers in purple. Okay, the numbers of Kenichi Udeza, the numbers of Corey Chavis and Brian Russell, all that. I'm like, so he said some coach has left the Bears' first 15 plays here. So I'm like, well, what are you going to do? He didn't answer because he picked it up and went down to the locker room. Here's how much he loved your team, ladies and gentlemen. Joe Sensor. He left the box, went down to the Vikings locker room. I don't know what was happening then. They were changing and getting ready. He's like, Bob Hagan, the former leader of the public relations department, I have to see Tice. Here's what I have. So he storms into the locker room, provides Mike Tice and the Minnesota Vikings the first 15 plays on that, as we know, quote, script, end quote, that teams run. And it was accurate. And here's how we know. Because the first play was a run to a number that I thought was a hieroglyphic, but it actually was running back Thomas Jones. The first play was a run. I mean, the Vikings jumped that thing like they were cheating like the New York Giants in the 2000 NFC title game. Jumped the play. Okay, they jumped it too well, as I learned after. Okay, because Lovie Smith and whomever was like, wait a minute here. Yeah, are you kidding me? You guys had 10 players around the ball. I mean, you knew it that well. The second play, because the Vikings might have been too much all over it, the Bears were going to run the second play. However, it was supposed to go right with Thomas Jones. They flipped it left. Everybody for the Vikings went to the spot off the script they thought it was going to be. Thomas Jones, 25 yards, effortless, galloping, and the play script bit was dead.
Yeah.
But that's how much Joe loves your team.
Wow.
I mean, I see that thing. I don't know what it is. I'm in my second year, and he takes it down to Tice, and it turned out to be the Bears' script of their first 15 plays. I told the story earlier of the comforting of a devastated offensive coordinator. That was 2005. Joe Sensor with his loving heart. It's 0-5 at Cincinnati. Vikings lose to Tampa Bay in their first game. Fred Smoot's on the team. He's talking so much trash that week up to the game. Chad Johnson, TJ Hushmanzada, they all heard about it. And the Vikings were convinced, Tice was convinced into that game, his offense was going to roll up and down the field on the Cincinnati Bengals. Well, the problem is the defense, they had problems. Chad Johnson caught a 70-yard touchdown pass very early in the game on Fred Smoot. He chirped at Fred Smoot more than I've ever seen a player chirp at any player during the course of a game, and I'm not an ever and ever guy. I mean, he let Smoot have it. Grabbed him one time. It's like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? So the Chad Johnson finished with 139 yards and a touchdown. Almost all of it was on Fred Smoot. Carson Palmer ate us up for 337 and 3. After the game, somebody used to join the 10-1 show at AM 1130 with PA and Dubé, offensive line coach Steve Loney. He joined every single Monday for 20 or 30 minutes. We taped it in the morning. It was a phenomenal conversation. I love Steve Loney to death. But he was the offensive line coach. The Vikings were set to be sold. Red McCombs, God rest his soul, knew he was going to sell the team within a year. They weren't spending any money, zero. Scott Linehan, who was ballyhooed, left the team to become Nick Saban's offensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins. So we need a coordinator. Yeah, elevate Steve. Well, that means he's going to do 2 jobs? Yeah. Really? Okay, cool. So Loney is the offensive line coach and offensive coordinator. The Vikings turned the ball over 7 times in that game and could not move it an inch. So after the game, next to the buses that we take to the airport, then fly back, Steve Loney's crying. I mean, he's really having a rough time with being overwhelmed with this whole thing. Rob Brzezinski, the elite Rob Brzezinski, rolls up to Lone Dog, hugs him, starts talking to him. I mean, these are big hugs with shoulders going up and down. He was really upset that this thing just wasn't being figured out. And Joe Sensor, and Joe and I sat next to each other on bus rides for about 4 or 5 years. And Joe saw it. So Joe said, P. He and Greg called me P. P, let me out. All right, cool. So I let him out. Walks off the bus, goes over to Lone Dog and Brzezinski, puts his arms around both of them. You see his head bobbing because he's talking in animated fashion. I got no idea what's being said. I just know 15 seconds later, Steve Loney laughed and had a smile on his face, and Brzezinski went on to bus number 1. Joe took his time to go over and calm a situation where he had no idea what was happening. That was the heart of Joe Sensor. You want to pause and do more around the corner?
Yeah, why not?
Let's do that. I'll be right back. Here's the cash thing.
Fan and BigDeck.com want to give you a shot to win some bonus bucks with the National Cash Contest. This hour's keyword is deposit. Enter the keyword now. The keyword is deposit. Enter it at KFAN.com.
April 20th of 2003. That song was from that night, and it was at Quest in Minneapolis. And the lady singing is named Joan Osborne. And 23 years and a couple of weeks ago, Joe and I, I'm from Washington, D.C. He's from Philadelphia. We grew up in, let's just say, different neighborhoods with different music than a lot of people listening now. And old school R&B was the passion of both of ours. And and Greg Coleman too, coming from the Jacksonville area in Florida. And so we would on bus rides, we would be like, all right, Spinners. And then I'll start first. I'll be around. Joe would go Sadie. Greg would go It's a Shame. I'd go Rubber Band Man. Joe would go Could It Be I'm Falling in Love? And just on and on. And we would do that to kill time on plane flights and road trips because we loved old school R&B so much. Well, Joe, knowing my adoration and knowledge of and passion for Motown, he told me the day of April 20th, whatever the day of the week that was, he was like, I'm taking you to see a show tonight. And I said, all right, what are we doing? We're going to Quest. Like, I think is it Cowboy Jack's?
Yeah, I think so.
That's a place. Okay, so I think it's where Cowboy Jack's Minneapolis is now by Target Field, like the upstairs bit. Well, that's like where Quest used to be. It was right around there.
Yep, right across down the street is the Loon there on 5th.
Thank you. Perfectly explained. I'm like, all right, well, who are we going to go see? And he said, well, they're making a year-long documentary of something called Standing in the Shadows of Motown. All right, well, what's that? Well, all the session musicians for all your favorite bands, Paul, Temptations, Four Tops, Martha Reeves and the Vandellas, all the R&B, Motown R&B bands, like the guy who created with My Girl by the Temptations, boom, 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 boom.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, the bass player who created that was one of these session artists. He was there. Some of the most familiar ditties from some of the most popular songs all time were the Funk Brothers, is what they were called. And the documentary was called Standing in the Shadows of Motown. I'm like, yeah, I'm in. So we go, and we're in the back. It's sold out. It's crowded. And the singers were Bootsy Collins, who was the bass player for Parliament Funkadelic. You've heard a song 8 million times, 9 to Noon, that we love, that goes, I'd rather be with you. Ooh, yeah. I'd rather be with you. That's Bootsy. When Bootsy and Bootzilla was his band, and they went out on the psychedelic scene and made music. But he was the bass player for Parliament Funkadelic with George Clinton. So Bootsy Collins sang an old song by the Contours called Do You Love Me? Do you love me?
Oh, yeah.
Now that I'm around. Watch me now. So Bootsy did that song. There was a cat there named Maxie Priest who sang a bunch of songs. And then this lady, Joan Osborne, I knew her name. I had no idea what she did. What Becomes of the Brokenhearted was done by not David Ruffin, something Ruffin. Eddie, I don't know what it was. But
it was Jimmy Ruffin.
Jimmy Ruffin, thank you. It was a cover. And I mean, this lady rolled up to the microphone looking like the sunshine. I'm like, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life, the way she radiates when she sings. Well, we're in the back. It's standing room only. No seats. Well, Joe's like, we'll go up there. And I'm like, okay. So Joe was a big man. People knew who he was, too, from his days playing with the Vikings. Hey, Joe. Hey, Joe. Hey, Joe. Uncle Joe. Joe. I was at Sensors Road. Joe. And while he diverted attention, the announcer maneuvered his way right in front of Joan Osborne singing, What Becomes of the Brokenhearted? And I just fell in love. I mean, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life from a musicality standpoint.
Just watching the video, it's a crazy ensemble.
Yes.
Behind her, too. I mean,
the Funk Brothers.
Nuts. Yeah, It's awesome.
So Joe brought me to that. That's a Skol story. Let's do this. I have one more to share.
Ooh.
And it involves the end. And 06 and him leaving the Vikings radio network. But Nordo, when I told him that I was going to go down memory lane, celebrating the memory of Joe Sensor, one of the great tight ends in the history of Minnesota Vikings football, career cut short due to a knee injury, 6th-round pick from Westchester in Pennsylvania. Big old, just wonderful, curly-haired behemoth man who came into the NFL, had it cut short, died yesterday at age 69. And it's, I mean, when I started calling Vikings games on the radio in 2002, I did so without any professional experience. And as I said earlier in the show, without Joe and Greg Coleman and Chad Hartman, and then eventually people like Greg Swedberg, Chad Abbott, and Kevin Harlan, I would not be calling games today if I didn't listen to those guys more so with the fix this, try this, think of this. Nobody does this, keep doing that. And Joe was a big, big part of that for my professional and personal life. And I love him and I miss him. And he died yesterday at the age 69. So when I told Nordo that, I mean, he got into the Laron. Well, what's the Laron? It's the Prophet. And he found a bunch of stuff that's really cool because like when we say Joe Sensor and then you hear this and maybe you remember this from 2002, We played the pull the microphones out of the bit, Pops yell and talk, Joe laughing. That was the first regular season game I ever called in my life. The second was the next week at home. Of course, there were like 80 points scored between the Vikings and the Bills. We had a kicker named Doug Bryan who missed a key extra point earlier in the game. He had a chance to, I think, tie it, maybe even send it to overtime right at the buzzer. And listen to Joe. Here's what happened.
The extra point, is it? It's no good again!
Get the hell out of here!
Doug Bryan missed it to the left again, and the Vikings only lead by 2.
Come on!
We're at Metrodome behind the Vikings bench. Joe leans out of the booth and looks down at the bench and goes, "Get the hell out of here." And they cut Doug Bryan later that week. He was gone. I can't remember who the next kicker was. What do you got over there?
Yeah, well, I just had a couple audio bits that just make me laugh and just make me appreciate. I'm just a rube at this time listening to you guys call games and just little bits like this.
Yeah, you're right. And Kansas City loves the blitz in this situation. It is second and long. The ball's on the 30-yard line for the Minnesota Vikings going in. This is a play where you have to be very careful because they're going to get a blitz. They're going to force Dante. If he's going to throw the ball, he's got to throw it quickly. But no tips at the line of scrimmage. Got to be complete.
2nd and 10 from the 30. Here comes a cornerback blitz by Eric Warfield. Dante calls an audible. 8 on the play clock. Warfield backs off. One receiver left, one right. Here comes Warfield. Here comes McLeon. Culpepper loops it right side. Moss caught. Great catch. Touchdown! Touchdown, Vikings! 30-yard connection. Dante to Randy Moss. And the Vikings grab the ever-important early lead.
Yeah, that's exactly right, PA. And it's exactly like we just said. They're going to blitz in that situation. Dante has to recognize it. He did. And I want to tell you, that was a great pickup by the rookie. Ontario Smith made a block in the backfield that enabled Dante to throw that football, and Randy just made the patented Moss catch.
Yep.
Just so beautiful.
You hear how much you'll love that team?
Are you kidding me? How about this?
Watch out for the super freak here.
Culpepper under center, goes to a knee.
You gotta be kidding me.
Joe, you're up 20-10 in hostile territory with two turnovers.
You got Randy Moss.
I understand that. That'll conclude the first half of action.
But play that again.
Watch out for the super freak here.
Culpepper under center, goes to a knee.
You gotta be kidding me.
Joe, you're up 20-10 in hostile territory with two turnovers.
You got Randy Moss.
Oh, that's great! I can't remember that.
Oh, just before.
What? Are you kidding me?
What I love, listen to you trying to explain it to him.
Watch out for the super freak here.
Culpepper under center, goes to a knee.
You gotta be kidding me.
Joe, you're up 20-10 in hostile territory with two turnovers.
You got Randy Moss.
I understand that. That'll conclude the first half of action.
I understand that. Box!
I don't understand that.
But you have the super freak. Well, I understand that. All right, let's. Here comes Joe Anderson or Muss with the halftime show.
Oh, now this one, maybe you can tell me. I couldn't tell exactly who he was conversing with. And I mean, I still laugh about this anytime it even comes to mind.
That's why I say he's a front runner.
This is about Warren Sapp, I believe, by the way.
That's why I say he's a front runner. They ought to call him Warren Fat because that's all he's good for. Just fat mouth, fat running at the mouth. That's all he can do.
Okay,
Joe, I agree with you.
That's Terry
Stembridge. You gotta admit he's a pretty good player. He's an ass.
Oh wow! Wow!
I gotta hear it one more time.
That's why I say he's a front runner. They ought to call him Warren Fat because that's all he's good for. He just fat mouth, fat running at the mouth. That's all he can do. Joe, I agree with you on that, but you got to admit he's a pretty good player. He's an ass.
Oh, geez. Okay, so Dan Rowe, I believe, God rest his soul, was the longtime play-by-play voice when the Vikings were on WCCO radio.
Yeah.
Too long to talk about what went into the switch and 01. Red McComb's best friend's son, who was calling Austin P baseball, Terry Stembridge, was the play-by-play voice. And then I took over in 2002. So that was the other voice that you heard.
Oh, my goodness, man.
All right, we got to pause, don't we?
I know we do.
What else do I got here?
I love this from that from the 03 game, too, just in awe of what had just transpired.
There are members of the Minnesota Vikings grieving all over the field on one knee, looking at the replay.
I think his right foot was out of bounds when he came down.
Well,
it was on the end line.
My God, I can't take this.
But I mean,
My God,
I did not
there
say
are members
that.
of the Minnesota Vikings grieving all over the field on one knee, looking at the replay.
I think his right foot was out of bounds when he came down.
Well,
it was on the end line.
My God, I can't take this.
But I mean,
There we go, Paul!
Wow. Well, we've been asked to find new button bar stuff.
a Rube was born.
I think, and a Rube was born.
Old can become new.
We've been asked to find new button bar stuff. I think God chose to give it to us in a roundabout way. Don't leave. We'll be.
I can't wait until tomorrow.
So 2006 was the first year for the Minnesota Vikings with Brad Childress. And I like Brad. Brad rubs some people the wrong way. I don't necessarily, and if I'm saying this out of turn, I apologize, but I don't think he and Ben Lieber necessarily had the greatest relationship when Ben played for the Vikings and maybe after, I'm not really sure, but Brad wasn't for everybody.
Right.
Brad was always super kind to me. And, Brad barked at me like the only argument I've ever gotten into with a coach on the radio was after a 2009 game at Soldier Field where I just thought Adrian Peterson, being Adrian Peterson, he's trying to stretch for every extra inch blade of grass he can get.
Yeah.
Big game end of the year, man.
Oh, was that the fumble?
Devin Aromashadu eventually puts a double move on Antoine Winfield in overtime. That was a big loss because the Vikings were tooth and nail to get home field advantage with the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah.
And, Adrian, instead of going out of bounds, he just kept stretching, dropped the ball, picked up by linebacker Hunter Hillenmeyer. I was like, so what do you know? It doesn't matter about that conversation. But I was like, that was too much. He was like, no, that's just whatever. Cool. So, but that's who Brad was. And I like Brad. So know that coming into this. But Joe Sensor's final year calling Vikings games was 2006. Something didn't click with Uncle Joe, his outside interests, and his, he had kids at a key time of life that were starting to do things. So Joe, with his outside interest and something not clicking with him and the team and his kids at that age, he left. Yeah. And it takes courage to do that. It's a fun job. And there are a lot of behind the scenes, like going to Vikings rookie camp today. I think that's fun. I like that. Meeting new people, talking about their stories, seeing what's on the coach's mind off the record to help formulate opinions up to training camp. I just like things like that. So did Joe. Brad tightened things in 2006, basically with the approach of, I've waited 30 years for this opportunity. I'm going to do it, win or lose, exactly the way I think it needs to be done.
Yeah.
Amen, brother. I mean, you're the head coach. It's your team. So didn't watch practice once that year. And that might have included Joe. So I never exactly learned why Joe departed because he wasn't a back talker and never, ever went to ripping people in small-minded fashion. I think he felt disconnected from the team and lost joy for the trips and the sweats. So he had the courage to leave a fun job. And it wasn't easy for him. It was very difficult. But he was a brave man. He was a kind man. He was a man who was a bastion of excellence at everything he did. And he's somebody that, even though I hadn't seen him in quite some time, it's, when he died, it really, really hurt when I learned of that yesterday. Pete Bursich took over the next year in 2007, and here we are. Pete and I calling games together, and we love working with each other. Those are a lot of good times. Joe Sensor loved this team as much as anybody I've ever met. The people who made things go, like LaCroix, Brzezinski, Tice, Loney, Ted Cottrell, George O'Leary, Bob Hagan, Tom West. The list goes on and on. That's the kind of guy Joe Sensor was. May God rest his soul. And may God bless you and your families. Thank you very much for listening to 9 to Noon. Have a great weekend. Bye.
If it's good news or money, leave a message.
Podcast today's Paul Allen Show or listen back to previous show and interviews by going to the iHeartRadio app or KFAN.com.